everyone, and welcome back to the channel. If you don't know me, my name is Jake, and the channel you're watching, 787 Dudes, is all about planes and aviation. And in today's video, the videos on today is the secret language of pilots, explaining ATC, and those mystery cabin dings. So if you've ever flown on a commercial airplane, you'll know there's a whole world of sounds and phrases that passengers rarely understand. From rapid fire chatter between pilots and air traffic control to those mystery dings, the ones that go ding dongs. And you're here in a cabin, all the time. And these sounds, just think of it like a secret code that pilots and flight attendants uses that passengers don't actually know about. So in today, we're cracking that code and we're going to deep dive into the fascinating, precise, and sometimes surprisingly quickly secret languages of commercial aviation, while demonstrating air traffic control, so ATC, communications, and explaining common pilot like language and stuff, and finally revealing those cabin chimes, actually what they actually mean, which I think is a pretty interesting one because it can relate to all of us. And trust me, by the end of this video, you'll be listening throughout the whole cabin on the whole flight in the new year. So let's start with the most iconic sound in aviation communication, the pilot's radio, the Speedbird 1123, whatever. The rapid fire back and forth, sometimes here on documentaries or even public airband feeds, which you can get them actually, they are quite cool. It sounds like pure chaos, but actually an incredible structure and on efficiency as well. So the primary goal of air traffic control, ATC, is safety. That's what it's there for. To keep planes separated, organise traffic flows, and guide aircraft safely from one airport to another, or point A, point B. Imagine hundreds and thousands of aircraft in the sky at any given moment. ATC is a conductor and incredibly complex system. So if you think about it, think of a orchestra, like a band, an orchestra, and you've got the guy with the sticks, you think that's ATC, and the musicians are all planes, that guy or person, that person anyway, is just like like leading all of them. Think of that as ATC, and all the musicians as aircraft. So the language that is standardly globally used by the International Civil Aviation Organization, or ICAO, which we talked about in the last video, ensures that pilots flying from New York to London will understand ATC in both countries, which obviously is a very, very important thing, even with different accents, and that's like just the easy one, they speak the same, we speak the same language to America. Some of the words are different, like sidewalk, trash can, but ATC and pilots aren't really going to be using that. But you go to, say Japan, the language barrier there and the accent again, but it means that pilots can understand it and ATC from different countries. So precision, is obviously very important. A single misheard word can have serious consequences. So key terms and phrases like Roger, I have received and understood your launch transmission, or not okay, or yes. Affirm, which isn't really used a lot, I think. I don't really hear lots of people using affirm nowadays. Or negative, yes or no. Standby, please wait, I'm busy, I'll get back to you in a minute. Clear for takeoff, clear to land. Probably one of the most critical clearances, means you have permission to do something. Squawk is just a number, if you think about it. So ATC is asking a pilot to enter a specific 4-digit code into their transponder, which can be done in the cockpit. And this code helps ATC to identify the aircraft on their radar. And then heavy, added to an aircraft call sign. So like, for example, Speedbird 123 heavy. This means it's a large aircraft like a 747, an A380, and it goes as small as way down to say an A330, 787 aircraft like that. And it just means that generally there's a significant wake turbulence, so created by the thrust of the engines and stuff. So other aircraft may need to, spend a bigger distance between it, unless it's a big aircraft. That's why the saying is, you always get one big aircraft and then big aircraft always follow. Not always true, obviously, but most of the time it can be, because they try and get all the big aircraft in so they can keep the gap the normal size, and then you have a big gap, and then say you might get an A321 next to it. So expedite, please do this quickly. This means please quickly do this. Often used when ATC needs the pilot to climb or descend faster than usually to maintain separation. So instead of it'd be like climb to, it would be expedite climb to, or descend to, or whatever. Mayday or pan, which again, pan isn't really used, it's more mayday. Emergency signals, as I think everyone will probably know, mayday. It means I've got an emergency. It's from the French m'aider, which means help me. It's for immediate grave danger, life or aircraft. It isn't immediately a life-threatening because it requires prompt assistance, a medical emergency on board, or a minor mechanical issue. And you will be surprised, you'll probably get mayday a bit more than you think, because again, medical emergencies happen, can happen quite often. Small minor mechanical issues can happen quite often, not life-threatening, just an issue that needs to be sorted out. So understanding basic terms, can really give a massive insight into the intricate dance happening between pilots and controllers. It's a constant loop of instructions, confirmation, and precise execution. So let's move to inside the cockpit, which is probably a bit more what you actually want to find out more about. So pilots communicate with each other, the flight attendants, and occasionally maintenance crews, using their own specific set of phrases and codes. They are rarely heard by passengers, but they are vital for smooth operations. Much of this language is about checklists and procedures. Commercial aircraft aviation is built on the principle of redundancy and verification. Each critical action, from starting engines to deploying landing gear, has a corresponding checklist and often a specific phrase. Yes, pretty much everything that pilots will do inside an aircraft and flight attendants have a checklist. Can it be really boring? Probably. I don't know. I'll let you know in hopefully about 15-ish so years. That'll be 29, and yeah, we'll say 15 years. Hopefully, it hasn't been done for 15 years, then I've really failed. So for example, start the engines, or even just start the aircraft, has a whole big checklist. Even to push back, again, has a whole big checklist. Probably, don't even know, but probably closing the door probably has a really big long checklist as well. So key phrases and procedures, cleared to copy ATIS. ATLAS stands for Automatic Terminal Information Service. It continuous broadcast of essential airport information, whether runway is in use. NOTAMs, so notice to airmen. Pilots will always copy or write down this information before contacting ATC for their clearance. Sometimes in Boeing aircraft, it can be done here on, here on the Oak. As you can see, maybe here, lots of writing. That can be done. That also normally gets used to flight numbers as well, because if you're doing lots of sectors, which is flights, just in fancy aviation terms, and say you got, going, say, I don't know, from Heathrow to Toulouse back to Heathrow, then to Heathrow to Barcelona, then Barcelona back, and then sometimes you can have 6 sectors, so that would be from Heathrow to Madeira back to Heathrow. That would be a really long day, but stuff like that. And obviously there's loads of different flight numbers, call signs and stuff, so they've all written them down here. V-speed, so you might hear this one, you might know this one, a series of critical airspeed readouts during takeoff. So V1 is decision speed. Below V1, you can abort a takeoff safely. Above V1, the aircraft must continue for takeoff even if an engine fails. VR, so rotate speed, So you might go V1, and then a couple of seconds later it might be it might be rotate or VR. So that's the speed where pilots pull back on the yoke to lift the nose wheel off the runway so you can start to ascend. And V2, takeoff safety speed, so minimum speed to maintain if an engine fails after V1, ensuring a safe climb, which obviously makes the situation a bit more safer. So gear down or 3 green, a call out from the first officer or monitoring pilot, so that could be the captain. Say if, so you got 2 pilots obviously, one of them will be the monitoring one, also the one that talks to ATC, the other one will be actually the pilot actually flying the aircraft, because obviously both pilots don't fly the aircraft at the same time, because that's just doesn't make sense, right? So that could be the captain, and it could also be the first officer. The first officer also flies as well. They're not just there just because they're there. You know, it's not just the captain that flies. So first officer also fly. Normally what happens is one will take off and the other one will land. So they'll obviously swap over roles, which actually probably happens most of the time. So say the captain might do takeoff and the first officer might be the monitoring pilot. So he'll speak to ATC, which the captain can also hear as well, and he will also be the one that will do like gears up, flaps full, well not flaps full, sorry, not on takeoff, like flap 10, spoilers armed, and stuff like that. So, you know, this gear down or 3 green, confirming that the landing gear has extended and is locked in place, indicated by 3 green lights on the cockpit panel. Obviously, if they don't go all green, then you either got an emergency or just a technical failure, which a technical failure is a lot better one, because it just means that the sensor, the monitor and stuff, it just isn't corresponding together, which normally what will happen, the pilots will probably just fly close to the airport so the ATC can see, okay, yeah, all your gear are down, there's nothing to worry about. Then they'll, you know, do their proper approach to land, which normally happens. And if it's not right, then they'll be like, okay, well, we've got an emergency, so, you know, they'll have one-way foam and stuff, especially if it's a nose gear, well, actually any gear. Obviously, on some bigger planes, like say a 380, missing a gear is quite a bad thing, but, you know, there's 22 wheels on an Airbus A380. If you miss one of the middle ones, you could probably still land. You know, so, yeah. So that will be indicated by the cockpit panel. So on a 737, it's here, as you can see, 3 green lights and the gear down, which makes no sense. This just really does not make any sense. I was looking at it the other day, and it was just like, it says here to go to 4,000 feet. They're underneath clouds, which means they are either in between cloud levels or anyway. But on here though, it still has 4,000 feet up here, which is right, but it's at a couple hundred feet, and a couple hundred feet gears normally up. That's saying that there's no power, no thrust going in the engines whatsoever. Yeah, and one throttle's further forward than the other, which wouldn't happen. So yeah, I could sit here for hours and explain every single thing wrong with that, which I might do in a YouTube short or TikTok. So next one anyway, flap settings. So pilots will call out flap settings during approach and takeoff. So flaps 5, flaps 20, flaps full. Flaps increase lift and drag. So sometimes if you have enough flaps, it will give you lift, but flaps full and, you know, a couple of flap settings before, it'll actually create drag. So it can be either or. So drag, obviously you see them on landing and stuff, it slows down the aircraft, but on takeoff you also see flaps, which you might not know, but they do. There's normally like flap 10, flap 15 on some aircraft, and that actually creates lift, helps the aircraft get off the ground, especially if it's a long aircraft, say like a 777, an A321 and stuff like that. Obviously, I mean, from where the gear are, which most aircraft are, obviously an A321 isn't a very long aircraft, but considering where the gear is quite a long aircraft. So full flaps increase lift. No, flaps increase lift and drag, allowing for slower approaches, speeds, and shorter landing distances, which obviously saves fuel, and it means that pilots can vacate the runway so the next plane can land, also speeding up arrivals and departures. Cabin crew, take your stations for arrival, departure, or it might be cabin crew, take seats for departure or takeoff or whatever. A direct instruction to flight attendants to be seated in their jump seats for takeoff or landing. Cross-check, an instruction given by pilots to verify the setting or reading. And it might be also doors to automatic, cross-check, or cross-check, doors to automatic, or doors to manual. Heard by cabin crew, doors to automatic, which means the slides are armed for emergency. So it might be arms, doors, which means that if there was an emergency, you could just open the door and hopefully the slide will activate anyway. Doors to manual, which means they're disarmed, which typically when they're parked at the gate, this is a critical safety step, because you think an air bridge up to the aircraft, connected to the aircraft, they open the door, an emergency slide comes out, that air bridge is not only going to be broken, but the emergency slide will push it, and air bridges are quite strong, don't get me wrong, but what will probably happen to the air bridge, it will be pushed up, damage the aircraft, which will cause critical damage. You think a whole plane full of fuel on, if it's just getting fueled, whole plane getting fueled, or it's worse for stairs as well, because it actually will push the stairs right up, damage the aircraft really badly. So like I said, it's a critical safety step. It's an initial dialogue that ensures nothing is missed and both pilots are always on the same page, as highly disciplined ballot and of checks and balances. So, the part you've probably all been waiting for, the mystery cabin dings and bongs. And what they really mean. I think this is probably one of the most important things and probably one of the most interesting things I think a 787 Dude video has had in a while. So, the moment many of you have been waiting for, the iconic, sometimes annoying, sometimes comforting dings and bongs you hear throughout a flight. They aren't just random sounds, they are critical communication systems between the cockpit and the cabin, and also between the flight attendants themselves. So most aircraft have a standard chime system, though an exact tone and numbers of dings can slightly vary between airlines and aircraft types. Generally, these chimes serve to alert flight attendants or signal a phase of flight. So before takeoff, before landing, which you hear a lot, I think. The ones I notice most are the ones straight after takeoff and the ones just before landing. And normally, the ones just before landing are just after they put the gear down. So, single high-low chime, so a low ding, meaning is usually indicates a passenger has pressed the call button above their seat or in a lavatory. Flight attendants know to respond. Visual, so a single high chime, so higher pitch ding, meaning often indicates a message from the cockpit to the cabin crew. This could often be a non-urgent, like a small amount of turbulence expected, or a simple fly, or acknowledgement of a call. So this could be a non-urgent alert, like a small amount of turbulence expected. So a double chime, high, low, high, low, high, ding, dong, like a ding, dong, meaning this is quite a significant one actually. It's a type of signal, a critical phase of flight, so either takeoff or landing, which I just said, meaning the aircraft is passing through 10,000 feet, which is quite a big barrier, a big buffer actually. Pilots can't speak in like a friendly conversation, like, oh, how was your dinner yesterday, stuff like that, until they're above 10,000 feet. Which is a key altitude for various procedures, like electronic devices can be used above 10,000 feet. Flight attendants are allowed to move around the cabin, so that's why you try and get to 10,000 feet as quickly as possible. A triple chime, often a series of 3 high-pitched ding-dongs, or dings, meaning that it's usually an urgent call, its significance, emergency, or high critical situation where immediate attention is required. This is rarely heard by passengers, and for a good thing as well. So 4 dings, repetitive bongs. So it means that often indicates a serious issue on the ground, rapid displaying needed, or a cabin system failure. Again, very rare for passengers to hear. So, for example, 4 dongs could be fuel's leaking on the ground. Everyone needs to get off extremely quickly. So next time you hear those chimes, you know exactly what they mean. So you're not just a background noise, they're essential signals ensuring a smooth and safe operation of your flight. So other cabin sounds and myths and misconceptions. So beyond the formal language, there are some sounds and phrases that passengers often worry about. So let's tackle and bust a few common myths. A barking dog. Probably one of the most safest things you can actually hear. So it's called a PTU. Some heard on Airbus aircraft, and actually only on Airbus aircraft. It's called the power transfer unit. It's an automatic hydraulic pump that transfer hydraulic pressure is especially noticeable on the ground before engines start or after landing, and it's completely normal. Actually, it means that you're actually going to have a safe flight. It pretty much means that the system that is there for safety has worked. So it's like, okay, well, amazing then. Whirring or buzzing before takeoff. It's normally the flaps and slats. It's the sound of hydraulic systems extending or retracting at the high lift devices on the wings. So if you have a window seat, you can see this happen normally if you're behind the wing. And I hear this sound, okay, I know what that is. I hear the PTU and I know what that is. But for a nervous flyer or even someone who's never flown before or just has no idea, it's going to be quite a worrying sound. So PA announcements, the flight attendants prepare for takeoff or landing, self-explanatory, ensure crews are secured, but people can sometimes take this as like an emergency, which is ridiculous, right? But no, yeah, some people can, and so crews to your stations can again worry passengers for don't know why. I mean, it doesn't worry me. I know what they're doing. Or cross-check and report. Often heard after doors are closed, flight attendants confirm that all doors are armed. So which also means that it can be. So like, I know I noticed it. I think the first time I actually noticed it was when I came back from Miami 2 years ago, and you could see. So I was sitting, I think, 3 rows to the back, and so just in front of the back A380 door, you can see like cabin crew arm doors for cross-check, and so one cabin crew would arm each side, and then they would go over and check, and just to make sure, obviously not saying that the other flight attendants obviously hasn't done it, but it's it was quite, I thought that was quite it's like a big safety feature that is as well. Just checking other people's works, make sure they've done it properly. No, not saying that they've tried to sabotage everyone on board and haven't done it, but more of a safety feature just to check what the other person's done it. So now, myth busting. So myths. Pilots are always chatty to ATC. So reality, while they're in constant communication, there are often periods of silence, especially during cruise, and they don't actually chat, socialise. It's all business. So I know you get like those videos on like YouTube of pilots pretending to, it's like pilots speaking like randomly, and there's one, it's like quite a big one of like a pilot doing a whole safety information thing, like a whole like welcome aboard stuff, and ATC heard it and stuff, and all the other pilots heard it. So the pilots only hear what ATC tells them. So for that to only happen, it would have been, I actually think that could happen, to be honest. So that's most of the time it's someone that's just like created something and they're fake. To be honest, they're fake. So another myth is pilots use secret codes to hide emergency. So in reality, while they use precise language, it's it's about clarity and not secrecy. In emergency, they'll use direct terms like mayday, 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 or pan, pan, which again, I never heard anyone say that before. And all they want to do is not confuse people. If they've got a really serious emergency on board, the last thing they want to do is be confusing people, right? So another myth is if a pilot announces an emergency, it's always direct. So like in reality, an emergency is declared, which often means they are prioritizing their aircraft and passengers to ATC and want an immediate assistance on a clear runway. It doesn't mean that there's an immediate danger, and sometimes can just be a precautionary measure. So just as a safety thing, we're going to need this. So in conclusion, there you have it, I guess. It's a crash course of a fantastic secret language on commercial aviation. From the precise clip tones of air traffic control and procedure calls in the cockpit, to yet the chimes and ding-dongs in the cabin, every sound and phrase plays a vital role, a very vital role, ensuring safety on board and getting to your destination, so point A to point B, efficiently. So next time you fly, I encourage you to listen a little closer. You probably will now after watching this video, and will probably be looking out for those little chimes and ding-dongs. You might just pick up on some of the secret communications and appreciate the incredible coordination that goes into every single flight. It's a testament to the professionality and the training of everyone on board to get you from point A to point B. And also, you might hear out for the PTU if you've got an Airbus aircraft, the flaps and slats retracting, or what do you call it, like coming back up and going down and stuff. So if you enjoyed this deep dive, please hit the like button, subscribe for more aviation insights, and let me know in the comment section below what's one aviation sound or phrase that you've always wondered about. I'd love to hear it. And again, as always, any questions you might have about aviation, it can be on anything, but probably commercial, commercial aviation. I could probably do, civil aviation as well, like normal, like general aviation, but military aviation, you're gonna have to ask someone else for that. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed today's video. I hope this has been a quite helpful one for you. Again, I used another script, which you might have picked up on, a bit longer than the last one, but I think it's actually a really good way, actually. And I wrote them myself, so I know what I want to say, but I think sometimes I just can't say it how I want to say it. So scripts, I wrote a script again. Pretty happy with myself, actually. I hope you enjoyed today's video, and I'll see you in the next one. And watch out for the YouTube short and TikTok where I explain everything wrong with this. So yeah, see you in the next one. Bye.